What's up, guys? Welcome to the Elite Self Show, episode 9. We got Mr. Connor Shelefontiuk on the pod with us today. Connor's a serial entrepreneur, very successful. He's done a bunch of different stuff, a bunch of different ventures, including started e-com and made his way over to crypto, blockchain, and even a COVID-related business. So I'm excited to kind of just get to know you a little bit more today and hopefully get some stuff out of you, because you are very knowledgeable in this very specific sector, and I think a lot of people could benefit from it. And I'm excited to chat today, man.
Likewise, looking forward to it.
Awesome, man. So first and foremost, I'd love to just get like a basic introduction, kind of like who you are, a little bit of a backstory, how you kind of got to this point. We'll dive into it.
You want the long version?
Give us like a fairly medium, give us like an honest, thick version of it.
Okay. I think the earliest point I could call myself entrepreneurial was probably when I was 13. I think that's like the first point in time where I started sort of having those thoughts of like, I literally the first memory I have of being, I guess, an entrepreneur was this vision of waking up in the morning with money being deposited into my bank account off of work that I had done basically to get that versus working like a 9 to 5 and sort of seeing the return of just working those hours. So started off kind of when I was 13. I literally had no idea what I was doing.
Right.
But I was a huge gamer when I first got started. This is like seems to be a common theme with a lot of entrepreneurs nowadays.
Yeah.
So I was a huge gamer, and my first goal originally was, can I pay my bills through playing video games? Basically, can I avoid the 9 to 5? Can I play video games? Can I pay my bills?
It's like every kid's dream right there.
Basically every kid's dream right there. Yeah. And that was really my first venture. I just set out to figure out if I could play video games and make money and pay my bills, and I did end up doing that. I started doing it when I was 13. Didn't really make a whole lot, but it sort of built the path towards figuring out what made that work. And by the time I was 16 to 17 was when I started making about 30 to 50 grand a year, basically solely playing video games at that point in time. So it was kind of the first. I consider it e-commerce. I mean, it's all digital. You're selling virtual goods. You have to market. I had to have a website, listings on different platforms, etc. But that was like the first taste of making money online. Basically, I had to. There was sales. There was convincing people to buy my product. There was building trust, building a reputation, learning how to advertise properly. So I didn't realize at the time that these were like skills that were being built. But they ended up becoming sort of like the foundation to when I did eventually shift away from the video game space and into I guess something that's more of an, I wouldn't say an actual business, but more of a common business versus something just playing video games.
So like, how did that work? The video game thing specifically, like, how did you make money in that department?
So I originally started off by trying to grind. I would grind and I'd make gold, and I'd level up these accounts and I'd sell them to people. And I realized that that was like a 9 to 5.
Right.
I was working like 8, 12 plus hours per day, trying to make gold, trying to make accounts, whatever, to make gold. And I was like, hold on a second. This is basically a 9 to 5. And I wasn't making that much money. But what I did notice was I was also I would sell the gold of the accounts to basically like these not really middlemen, but they're like these merchants. They would buy and sell, they'd flip it basically. And I realized what they were doing was they were just buying it from me at a lower price, and then they were reselling it to a large customer base that they had.
They were doing the work.
Exactly. They weren't doing any of the work, so they were using me and a ton of other people to sort of collect all these things for them. They'd buy them at 30 cents, for example, and they'd sell at 35 cents to the next person in line that was willing to buy from them, looking for a trusted place to buy. So that's when I sort of I didn't even know the term for it, but they were essentially using an arbitrage strategy on the game. So I went from grinding to realizing this is not going to go anywhere because I'm just working a 9 to 5 like this, and there's no way I wanted to make more. There's no way of making more unless I put more hours of work into it. So it was a very logical thought process to go from that to, well, why don't I just do what these guys are doing? I have other people who I know are doing the same thing, so why don't I say, hey, I'll buy it from you guys and then look for people to sell it to. So that's when, this was around like probably 17, 18-ish, when I decided to transition into that arbitrage model at the time, which was then buying and then reselling to people. And that's when money went through the roof. I went from like 30 to 50K in a year if I was really working my ass off to get there.
Right.
That's when I had my first like 6-figure year, I guess, of profit. So I did way less work, like 50 to 80% less work, and I was making two to three times the amount of money at that point in time.
So a lot of kids, by the way, like when they're 13 especially, they're playing video games. Not a lot of them have that mechanism saying, like, how can I make money out of this? Like I was grinding COD like no tomorrow, and you know, a lot of people like have no concept of like how can I actually ROI out of this. Like have you always had that in your mind where it's like how can I profit off of this? How can I do this? Like is that entrepreneurship spirit always been within you?
Yeah, I don't know where it comes from. I don't know if it was like movies or shows or whatever that was sort of that integrated into my mind at the time. It was always there as long as I could remember. It was always, how can I make money off of this? How can I pay my bills with this? No matter any game I was playing, whatever I was doing, that was sort of always in mind. And if I couldn't, then I'd just move on to another game, and I wouldn't play that game because there's no way of monetizing it in any way, shape, or form.
Right. So you were essentially doing this on the side while you were in school, while you're going through high school. Yeah. What was that dynamic like for you? Were you just like, school's just bullshit, let me just do this on the side?
Yeah, literally. Yeah, it was my parents were very like, do good in school, get good grades, you know, get a post-secondary education, get a good job, get a good career. And my mind is like, but you're telling me to do these things which is going to equate to X amount of dollars. I'm already making that money. Yeah. And if I keep doing what I'm doing, I see a path to making more money. But nobody really understood that because it was playing video games. So they just looked at it as, well, you're playing video games, that's not a job, that's not a career. You're not going to be able to go anywhere with that. So it was a very, I'd say, frustrating scenario because the entire world was saying, hey, you're an idiot, you shouldn't be doing this. When I'm sitting there like, no, this is actually working. I just need to keep putting the work in to make it better. So it was an interesting scenario. It caused a lot of friction, that's for sure. Yeah,
no kidding. And were you just like so strong in your own belief, in your own faith, in your own path that you were just like willing to take that and then show them essentially that you're doing the correct thing for you?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say, I'd say it started off as I'm going to show you, I'm going to prove you wrong, and eventually transitioned into, I literally don't care what you think anymore because I can so clearly see that this is working and that there is a bigger vision and a bigger path to what I'm doing. I didn't know what it was or how I was going to get to it, but my mind at the time basically said, hey, you figured it out this far off of literally no skills, nothing. What would happen if you keep going and you keep getting better and you keep learning how to do things better? Because I could see, when you look back, you can very, very clearly see growth. Yes. Right? So I look back and I was like, hey, this is when I started. I made nothing. I did it for a couple of years. I figured all these things out. Then I made money. Then I made more. Then I made more. Then I made more. So I could very clearly see what a future could look like based off of the progression of the past. So I was very, very confident in my own vision, regardless of what any person said to me. Yeah, makes sense. And viewing like college and school from a purely ROI perspective, it provides like a completely different lens. A lot of parents, I feel like, are just like blinded by just this concept that school equals success and everything else doesn't. Like, what do you say to like maybe like kids or even parents of like a different lens to view school or just education in general? Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I think that's a very generational thing. Like, I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs that sort of came from that generation talk on this, and it was a very generational thing. Like, at the time when they were 19, when they were growing up, that was completely right. Because at the time there were not many people going to school. There were not many people, they needed many people for trades, many people for careers. So there were very good opportunities. And that was also paired with a lack of knowledge that was accessible. You couldn't, they didn't have an iPhone that they could go and, learn how to drop ship, learn how to market. For them, they had to either go to school or go to a library. There's no other option. So it was it's a very hard thing you can't really, you can't really fault them for that thought process, because they were right in their time, but the time has shifted. So now it's what I tell people now is, you don't necessarily need school, because the information is out there. If you're depending on what you want to do, if you want to be a doctor and you're passionate about that, yeah, go to school.
Sure.
You're not going to be able to Google and learn how to be a doctor and become a doctor, right, or a lawyer or whatever. But if you want to build a business, if you want to be a marketer, if you want to be a developer, whatever, and you want to do it your own way, do it your own way.
Yes.
You can do that. The resources are accessible now, so you just have to be confident enough in yourself and your own vision, and sort of shut out the rest of the world. Otherwise, they're just going to bring you down, and they're going to keep. And it's not because they're doing it to be malicious.
Yes,
it's because in their time it actually made sense, and they don't know any better now.
Very cool. And if you're maybe like a kid, like 18, 17, kind of like opening him or herself up to the world, and they're considering like university versus like some type of online business versus like, you know, traveling for a year, maybe their intention is just like figure out like what they're going to do with their life. What are some like steps or philosophies you'd recommend to that person in that situation?
If there's something you want to do it. That's literally it. Like especially when I think you're like probably like 18 to, I mean, I'd say even as far as like 25, you don't really know what the hell you want to do.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I wanted to do at 18. That was the main reason I didn't want to go to school. I knew I wanted to do something. I didn't know what it was. But again, the logical side of my brain said, if you don't know what you want to do, why would you go and put yourself $60,000 in debt to do something that you don't even know if you're going to want to do in 4 years? So it didn't, to me, it just made no sense at all to do it. So for people that are in that scenario, just try things. Literally just go and, you want to try and start a business, go and try and start a business. You want to travel, go and travel. You want to, try and discover who you are and what you want to do, go and do that. It's going to take, there's a process of discovery, but I think Gary Vee says this a lot. You don't learn what you want to do until you actually don't do it.
Sure.
Right? So you're not just going to have this, very few people anyway, some people have this sort of epiphany, they want to be an actor or a musician or whatever, and literally that's it, and they just do that for their whole life.
Right.
99% of people, you're not going to figure that out until you do it.
Yeah, 100%, man. So scaling back to your journey, how did you transition from the video game to e-com? Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, so this was when I was 22. I was still gaming pretty hard.
So you continued that right out of high school. You just went all in on that essentially.
Yeah. I played junior football from 19 to 22. So I basically paid all my bills through gaming. So football, the gear, the food, the car, the gas, all that I completely paid for because I love football. So I wanted to play football. So I basically put myself through all of that through gaming. So I would basically game all day. Make money, and then I go to practice at night at 6 o'clock.
Right.
Practice all the way till get back home at 11, go to sleep, do it again the next day. So I did that for 4 years, all the way up until I was 22. And then 22 football ended. I was still gaming, and this was a point in time where one of the people that I was gaming with, out of the blue, we were just having this conversation. He was like, "Yeah, I'm making like $100, $200 a day right now." Doing this thing called drop shipping, and it's really easy. And he was also a university student at the time. So what he was doing was he had like this drop shipping clothing brand, and he would go to all the different sororities and he'd hand out these pamphlets, and they'd become essentially like affiliates, and they'd go around the school and they'd hand out like these cards, and he was making like $100, $200 a day at the time. And that piqued my interest.
Yes.
Because that was like, he's like super passive. Once I did it, the affiliates sort of ran it for him, and then he was able to put himself through school plus game at the time without the need for a job, because this was making his money. So that caught my interest, and that kind of put me down the rabbit hole of drop shipping from that point in time, and sort of the entry into, I guess, the classic e-commerce, physical goods.
And that was like not the entry point, but it wasn't like as popular back then by any stretch of the imagination.
No, like that at that time. There was, you search on YouTube now, you're going to find a billion results on dropshipping, how to do it, courses, this, that, whatever. At the time, there was a handful. Like there was maybe 3 to 4 people at that point in time that had some semi-decent material on dropshipping, a little bit of Facebook ads, but for the most part, like there was like 1 or 2 courses that you could buy, a handful of YouTubers, not a whole lot of material out there.
Yeah, interesting. So at 22, you kind of like, did football end at that point too? And then did you stop cold turkey the video gaming situation, go right into econ like full time, or like how that work?
Yeah, so football stopped entirely. That was my 22 was my last year, so I aged out that year. That was completely done. So I was like 40, 50 hours a week that I got back.
Right.
Basically, I didn't know what to do because I had been playing football literally 40 to 50 hours a week for the past 4 years. So I was like, that's like ending a full-time job.
Yeah.
Basically, just completely gone. So that was a huge chunk of time. Unfortunately, I didn't use that as good as I could have. I got I got back hardcore into gaming at the time, but not in a positive way. So I would still make money, but I think the loss of sports and all that time, it just went into a very negative place.
Yeah.
So there was a couple hours a day that I would spend learning drop shipping and trying things here and there, but the majority of it was not used as well as it could have been. That's for sure.
Interesting. And then, so how did that turn out over the next year, 2 years? How did you kind of get more on a productive path out of that?
Yeah, so I think it just came down to the realization that I have been doing this for a long time and I don't really have a lot to show for it.
Right.
And again, I'm a very logical person. I think I'm very lucky that I'm a very logical person, so I can sit out and look at my past decisions and be like, these are the decisions that I've made, this is the outcome that it's generated. If I want a different outcome, then I'm gonna have to make different decisions. So I've always sort of done that. I've always done like these self-audits on myself, basically, where it's like, here's my situation, if I want to change it, what do I have to change? And then you just reverse engineer what you've done, and then you look at it and you're like, you're spending money, and you're spending time unnecessarily. When football ended, it got bad. Like I stopped training, obviously 3-4 hours a day, so health started deteriorating. I stopped eating healthy. I started ordering lots of bad food, so it was like becoming very unhealthy, plus spending a lot of money unnecessarily.
Right.
And I looked at that, and I kind of realized that football was the thing that was sort of keeping it together, because I had the routine, and I had the training, and I had the exercise, and I had the health, and I had the mindset, and I had all those things, but that was because of football, not because I set it up for myself. So I basically put 2 and 2 together and said, I have to do something that is similar to what I was doing with football, because that's when I was motivated. I had bills to pay. I wanted to play sports, so I had to pay those bills. So I would put the time and the money into those things, into the gym memberships and the training and the equipment and all that sort of stuff. So I had to figure that out first. Once I figured that out, and I got back on a good routine, then I started putting significantly more time into drop shipping. The first sort of store that I made did terrible. I burned my entire life savings. I lost like $30,000 basically. That was all my savings at the time, just completely gone. But I didn't look at it as a bad thing. It's another thing I'm very fortunate that I have, is I don't look at things negatively. I just look at things as they are, and how to fix them. And that turned into, I lost this money, yes, but what did I learn from it? And what I learned from it was Facebook advertising was a lot better than the organic affiliate sort of route that I was going, because I tried a little bit of Facebook ads in there, and there was a product on that store, even though the rest of them did absolutely nothing. There was one product that showed promise. So I thought, hey, I'm gonna go back, play some video games, make some more money, get an advertising budget, and I'm gonna try it again. And then that just kind of led to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, and many attempts later, eventually it worked.
Interesting. So did you like double down on Facebook ads and that product next door? So that product that worked, I basically took it and I built a store that was sort of centered around that product. Like it went from like jewelry and apparel and clothing and all this stuff into just jewelry, focused around this store, using Facebook ads instead of sort of an everything store that had hundreds of products that we were trying to do like affiliate and organic. Honed in on Facebook ads, learned those. I ended up buying a course for like $1,000 at the time, which is a lot of money. Learned Facebook ads, really honed in on that skill. And then I made my first, on that store, I made like a few $1,000s profit. It wasn't incredible. I think I ended up probably breaking even at the end of it once all the ad costs and everything were accounted for.
But again, I learned something
Yeah.
from that again. So I took that one and then I turned it into a branded store instead of just a just sort of like an everything store. I turned it into a branded store around that product. And then that one was the first store to do $100,000 profit in a year on that store. So it was basically this progression of learn something from the failure, try it again, learn something from that failure, try it again, and then get a big win because of all those previous failures that sort of stacked up.
Yeah, up until that $100,000 profit moment, like what do you feel like was your biggest win internally? Was that it? Where you're like, oh wait, like this is...
Yeah, I think the biggest win was I learned something. That was when I look at situations. This is why I said it's never a negative situation. It's never actually a bad situation as long as you learn.
Right.
Where people have negative situations is where something bad happens and you don't learn from it. Then yeah,
right.
It's a negative situation because you didn't get anything positive from it. But
right.
you're never going to get a win until you lose and learn from it. So take to me the lesson is the win. I could lose all my money tomorrow, get a massive lesson from it that may not pay me off for 3 years, but I'm going to look at it as a win because it's like, holy hell, I learned this lesson from all this loss, and that is going to be what makes me win in a few years.
Yeah. Did that take practice, that mentality, to like ask yourself what it's like trying to show me, teach me, develop me? Yeah.
I always had the idea of it internally that's like, hey, I learned something from this. But it took practice to get rid of the anger and the negativity and the sort of hate towards the situation and the willingness to continue even when there's so much loss, basically. Because a lot of people, you lose your life savings and it's like soul crushing, basically. And it's like, I'm done, I'm never doing this, because they don't want to experience that pain and that loss again. But if you just reframe it to, yes, all this happened, but that lesson is necessary to go to another level, right? So there's a price you have to pay at every end, and this is it's an infinitely repeating pattern. You could be a billionaire and you're going to do something that loses you $500 million, and that's going to be the lesson that you needed to learn and the price you needed to pay to go from $1 billion to $10 billion. It's just it's an infinitely repeating. You don't know until you do it, and then you learn. Yeah,
of course. And by the way, during this whole time, did you have like similar friends? Was your friend circle completely reconfiguring? How did that go?
Yeah, so that was I'd say probably the hardest part of the entire situation. I played football, so the majority of my friend group they're all athletes. Maybe there was like one or two of them that had entrepreneurial vibes, but they weren't actively, like they were working towards a football career. There was no sort of, they weren't doing anything businessy, they weren't doing anything entrepreneurial. So it was a very lonesome journey because anything that I was experiencing, I had literally nobody else that had experienced it in my life, nobody that I could have a conversation with. So it was basically just me alone in a room, trying to figure out what was going on and how to deal with it.
Were you like, so you didn't have like a in-person circle around you that was that like-minded. What books or mentors or people online were you kind of like utilizing or learning from? Yeah,
so book-wise, I didn't really do a lot of reading back then. That's something I started probably 2 years after that sort of time frame. I was listening to a lot of Gary Vee at the time.
I feel like Gary Vee's like the gateway for a lot of people.
He is. Gary Vee is 100% the gateway for a lot of people. Gary Vee at the time, he wasn't nearly as big at the time, but he still had content online that was sort of motivational. It was like, how to get through stuff. Alex Becker actually was a big one. He was like one of the first people. His sort of like come up in the like internet marketer space, course space, all that stuff.
He was like one of the OGs to do.
Yeah, he was one of the OGs for dropshipping. His like YouTube course and stuff was one of the first. I think it was actually the second course that I went through for dropshipping.
What year was this, by the way?
This would have been 2016.
2016.
Yeah, 2016. That was, I think 2016 was my last year playing football. Yeah, so 2016 would have been when it started. There was a guy named Dan De Silva at the time as well, who was putting out some content. Ty Lopez was also just kind of getting his start. at the time. So there was like, Sam Evans, yeah.
Right.
Sam Evans was another big one. I came on to him, I think, about 2 years after that, when I was 23 or 24. But yeah, there's a small group of people that were sort of putting out content at the time that I could watch, listen to, pay attention to, learn from.
Yeah, makes sense. So at your next couple of e-com stores, it kind of broke even. Did it eventually got to 100K? Mm-hmm. How did things branch off from there?
Yeah, so the 100K was like there's another big lesson in that one. So I made that money, and then I tried to replicate it. So I built a bunch of stores, and then I ended up losing all the money that I made off of the $100,000 again. This is like my repeating journey. It's like make a bunch of money, lose it all, and then 10x it, and then lose it all, and then 10x it. It's like this constant. I just consistently go all in on everything that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I learned a ton of lessons on sort of in that process of trying to replicate it. It just basically got too hectic. I couldn't handle it. I didn't have systems. I didn't know what systems were. I didn't know what employees were. I didn't know what SOPs were. Any of that. So it was basically me doing it all myself. And this was back when you had to manually fulfill every order. So now there's software, there's automation to do it. But I literally would have to go in. I had to click through everything, make sure their address was good, click it, pay for it, and then eventually ship it. So I was spending some days I was spending 4 hours fulfilling orders myself. I had no idea I could hire somebody to do that. But I lost all that money, and I was completely broke again after just making $100,000 in that year. The business was still running, so I thought to myself, hey, I'm going to try and sell it. Ended up selling it. I sold it for I think like $43,000 or $44,000.
Nice. Very cool.
And that was like, okay, reset. I'm out of everything. Here's my reset. I have more cash than I started with, basically. I've got some money back. Let's do it again. So then I invested I'd say 80% of that money into mentorship, into coaching, into learning, into courses, basically, because again, my logical side of my brain said, I don't know how to do more than this. I literally don't. I know how to get to this point, and I could probably do it again, but I want to go bigger. So if I want to go bigger, I have to learn from somebody who's gone bigger. So that's actually when I ended up getting into Sam Evans' program. In that year, his course and his mentorship in the group coaching program. I learned a ton about advertising, marketing systems, how to structure things, how to be more efficient. And that's when I put all of that newfound knowledge and then the money I had into another store, another brand, and then that was, again, at that point in time, the biggest success of the time. It did 1.9 million in 6 months.
Wow.
From that point onwards. So that was like a compound of everything I'd done in the past into a new project with everything that I had just learned again and a little bit of guidance. Basically just exploded the entire situation.
Wow. And what age was this?
I think it was 24.
24.
Yeah, I think it was 24. It's all a blur now.
Yeah.
But I think it was 2018. So I think it would have been 24. Yeah.
Got you. And then what was your mindset like after making that first meal? Was it like
horrendous?
Horrendous? In what way?
I'm hot shit.
Oh.
Yeah. I'd never made that kind of money before. On that store, I think I made it was 1.9 million revenue. So I think I probably cleared it was really high margin, so I think it was around $800,000 or $900,000 profit that year. I'd never seen that kind of money before in my life. The most I had ever had in my bank account was $50,000 in the past, and all of a sudden I'm literally getting. There was one month I got $260,000 deposited into my account, and I'm sitting there this is insane.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. So it was I learned another very hard lesson again, that you're not hot shit.
Right. How'd you learn that lesson?
By blowing it all.
Oh, really?
I lost all that money again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that was I got really good at selling. Right. So I learned how to sell. I learned how to market, but I didn't learn how to fulfill. I didn't learn how to give a good customer experience. I didn't learn how to sort of have control over all of the quality of the business and the experience that people were getting. So there was, from that I just started doing stupid things. So I put like employees in place that I didn't really train and just kind of gave them like, here, do this. But I was so good at selling that I couldn't clearly see where the business was going because there was just money coming in, right? So it actually started falling apart 3 months into the 6 months of the large amount of money that was being made, but I didn't realize that. So there was I was making all this money, but because I hired like somebody to deal with customers and somebody to deal with the advertising, I didn't really see what was going on. I started traveling a lot, so I was going, I think I went on like 4 or 5 trips in that time period. I was going and hanging out with friends. I was going out clubbing. I was going out just doing a bunch of. I was just spending money, basically, because I had all this money, so I wanted to do all these things that I couldn't afford before. So I was like literally going out for like $10,000 dinners. I was spending $8,000 on a first class flight. Just because I'd never done it before, and then going to the nicest restaurants and getting private drivers and this and that, and it was like because I'd never done it before, so at the time it was like making all this money. So to spend $100,000 a month when you're making $250,000 a month didn't seem like a whole lot. So that kind of kept going, and then I think at roughly the 6 month point in that journey. One of my suppliers ended up screwing me over, and they didn't ship. I think it was like 4,000 orders, around 4,000 orders. They had like this exit scam. They had me and like 9 other people that paid for all this inventory to ship. It was probably like $500,000 worth of inventory, and they just disappeared, completely disappeared. They gave us all these fake tracking numbers, so we didn't know that that something was wrong, and I didn't because I wasn't paying attention to the business. So. If I was doing that, I would have hopefully looked into it, gone down the steps to realize, hey, something's off here. But I didn't, and because of that, I ended up having my entire cash flow from a month locked into a PayPal account because there's so many complaints that PayPal was like, hey, they thought I was defrauding customers because I was not shipping it to them. I thought I was because we had all these tracking numbers. It was only when I submitted those tracking numbers to PayPal to validate that I was shipping the orders, they're like, none of these tracking numbers are valid. I'm like, what do you mean? These are the tracking numbers my supplier gave me. Here's the the invoice I paid them and this and that. And they're like, these are fake tracking numbers, basically. So I ended up having $190,000 locked in a PayPal account. And this was meant to go towards marketing. This was supposed to go towards cost of goods, software, employees, all that. So all this money is now frozen in the account, and I have like $100,000 in bills to pay. And I wasn't saving, I wasn't doing it, I was literally just sort of spending the business money as I went. So I had the money to cover it, so I covered all those bills, and I'm like, no worries, I'm gonna get this money back, eventually from PayPal, so I'll sort of be able to recover it. But another thing that happened was, because I had no more PayPal, my sales dropped by like 60%. On the store. So the store became unprofitable because we no longer had PayPal as a sales channel. And people, because it was low ticket products, people love to use PayPal for low ticket products. So sales volume was like gone. As we became unprofitable, sales were going down. I had all these bills to pay, I had commitments to employees and this and that. It was an absolute nightmare of a situation. And then on top of it, I had to refund all those customers as well. So I think it was like $200,000 in refunds that I had to do at the time. So literally, it was the culmination of I got really good at one thing, but I didn't get good at all these other things. So all that money that I made just completely wiped out the same year. So it literally went from printing money to no longer making money and losing all the money that I had made all in the process of the same year.
Wow. So it's like life kind of showed you 2 major lessons. One, like you're not hot shit, don't blow it, and also like business systems, they matter. You need to look into this. Is that kind of how you took it immediately by that point?
That was a rough time. That was one of the harder points of life because you go from such a high from making so much money and all these plans. I bought a house in that time period too. So now I have a mortgage to deal with, and it was an expensive house too because I was like, oh, no worries, I'm making all this money, so I can afford an expensive mortgage and this and that. And then it was like the crushing weight of I owe all this money and my only source of income is now completely gone. So there was a process of like I
So your entire store just kind of like, did you still maintain it, or like did it vanish, or like how did that?
So it made some money organically, but I couldn't run ads because there was no PayPal, and the majority of our sales came through PayPal. So the ads were instantly unprofitable. Literally by the next morning when PayPal got locked, ads were unprofitable. Right. So the only income I was making was some organic income, but that was just instantly going to cover refunds for people, cover supplier costs, advertising costs that had to be paid, etc.
Right, and this is like what, 24, 25?
Yeah, I would have been 24 and a half, like about to turn 25 basically.
So everything just went to zero. What did you do from that point? Like, was it a hard period for a little bit? Like, what did you do?
Yeah, it was a very, very rough period for a bit. Fortunately, it kind of worked out where the money that I made was able to cover all of the expenses. So it wasn't like I wasn't like sitting on like $300,000 in debt and nowhere to make money. It was basically I had to just cut all my spending, cut all the trips that I was supposed to go on, all the things that I was going to buy, and just put the money into paying back all these bills that had been accrued. So there's like a 6-month period of, I have to pay, these people back and this and that, and eventually everything sort of settled. And then I was like, my PayPal account finally got unlocked. Fantastic. So I got this money from PayPal. I ended up taking like 20 grand of it, so I got like $170,000 ish from PayPal. I was like, great, I got this money. And then I got a tax bill. And then the tax bill took the rest of that money entirely.
Wow.
Because basically what happened was because obviously over that period of time I was paying back all those bills, I wasn't putting money aside for taxes.
Sure.
So I just had this massive tax bill at the end of it from all the money that I made last year, and I was spending, not really realizing that you can't write off an $8,000 first class flight. You can't write off a $10,000 trip to Disneyland. Like there's a lot of stuff that you think is going to go your way, and then all of a sudden you get the bill at the end of the day, and you're like, I literally have to pay this. There's no fighting a tax bill. Like you're not going to dispute it, and they're going to be like, oh yeah, no worries, you don't have to pay it. It's literally here's the bill, pay it, and you have X amount of days to pay it, kind of thing. So I think I ended up with like 90 grand out of that after all the money that I made. I ended up with like 90 grand left to my name.
Wow. So obviously you just swallowed some hard pills, like changing your lifestyle and canceling all this stuff. So you have 90 grand, but a boatload of experience you developed yourself. What did you do from that point?
Yeah, so I ended up going back to that store. My PayPal got unbanned. Going back to that store, sort of rebuilding everything, getting employees on board, getting systems in place, getting all of the things that I had time to reflect on and say these were the reasons why I ended up where I ended up. Let's fix all of those things.
Right.
I ended up fixing them, and then that basically within like the first few months of fixing them, the brand started making money again, and it sort of went back on the path that it was before, and it ended up doing better than before. It ended up doing about $2 million a year for the following 3 years, basically.
And that was still your only venture at the time, just going all in on that?
Yeah, it was my only real venture at the time. Once I sort of had that automated, I started getting into coaching. I built like a coaching business. I started teaching people the lessons that I learned throughout the process. I showed them the system, like how to build a brand, advertise, etc. And those ended up being the only two things that I did for many years. It was purely the e-commerce, the store, and the brand, and then coaching and consulting. And that was it, yeah.
And so now you've entered this period where you have so many lessons. What was your mindset like making like $2 million like 3 years in a row? Just like I imagine you would have felt like refreshed, more dialed in, and more optimistic about. You have a fresh slate. You learn all these lessons.
Oh yeah,
how was that for you?
Significantly more optimistic. It went from really horrible, really negative to okay, I can breathe now. I've learned a lesson. I'm never ever going to do that again. I'm never going to sort of spend money like that as I make it. Certainly not take it out of the business and spend it like I was spending like personal income. Basically. And it was a very refreshing thing because you have this clean slate, you have the skill set, and now you're on a better path. Basically, where you've seen all the things. And this is why I say you have to do it to learn it, and then once you've learned it, you can, if you're, if you look at it logically and you actually admit the wrong that you've done, that the thing you did poorly, then you can say, okay, I don't have to ever do those things again.
Sure.
My life is going to be significantly better because of it. So it was a very refreshing scenario to have a very clear path, clean slate, basically, to be able to move forward with.
Yeah. Did you feel like every ounce of what happened the 10 preceding years to that like needed to happen?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. There's no way. Like I'm very, very grateful to have learned those lessons at what I think is a pretty young age.
Yeah.
Just because it's going to benefit me infinitely into the future. Like I'm not going to be in a scenario where I'll be in a scenario where I make 10 times the amount of money, and I'm not going to learn the lesson on 10 times the amount of money because I already know what the lesson looks like. So I'm grateful that I didn't do it with $100 million. A lot of you hear like people who win the lottery, they'll win like 50 million in the lottery and they'll be broke by the next year because that's the first time they've learned the lesson. I was able to learn the lesson at a young age with a relatively small amount of money in the grand scheme of things, and that lesson is now going to be applied at a much larger scale.
Interesting. So after making this significant amount of money and you feel like everything's kind of above board now, did you ever have any money-related mindset obstacles that you had to overcome? Like obviously making more money than I'm assuming you ever, maybe that you conceptualized when you were younger, that your family ever has. Like what was that like for you, the money department?
Yeah, I never recall struggling with like I don't deserve this kind of mentality. The only money sort of mindset thing that I ran into was fear of making money again because of what happened the first time. Because I didn't know if I would actually be able to handle it in the correct way again in the future, because it was such a wild situation basically, and it was like the ultimate high of highs to the literal low of lows within a year basically. So there was almost this fear that I don't want to experience this again. So there was a period of I have to go through some mental work to get myself making money again, because I'm worried that I'm gonna end up in the exact same scenario again.
Yeah, makes sense, man. And you started the education business. Like, what's your mindset to start giving back? Like, did you develop more of a mission or a purpose at that chapter as well?
Yeah, I wanted to build a community for people because I had nothing basically when I was sort of going through that process. So I wanted to build a community environment for people to have, other people to work with, sort of, myself to work with them, sort of guide them. And I also wanted to help people become better versions of themselves basically, and sort of overcome their limiting beliefs. I made way more money from e-com than I ever did from the coaching business. Like the coaching, I always looked at it as if I get really good at e-com, then the coaching will naturally do well because I'm so the focus was mainly e-com. But it kind of started from friends asking for help. That was literally it. It was when I sort of started doing pretty well and I was posting about it on social media. I had tons of friends that I'd grown up with that were basically like, can we get coffee? Can you teach me? Can you show me what you're doing? And I wanted to help them, but I can't have coffee with 70 different people in a 1 week period. I can't teach all these people one-on-one. So that was basically, it started off as I literally just created a course and I just gave it to people for free. And then eventually people started saying, hey, can I pay you? Can I pay you for coaching? Can I pay you for this and that? And I was like, well, I guess sure. Like if you think you're going to get value out of it, it wasn't approached from a perspective of I'm going to do this to make money. It was if I can provide you value and you get value from it, then I've earned some sort of value out of that as well. So it was very much an even exchange of value.
Yeah, makes sense. So you, after these 3 years of making $2 million a year and starting the coaching, how did things go from that point?
Oh man.
And what were going to see, like what, 28, 27, 28?
Yeah, so I restarted the business, I guess when it was 24, it was like the end of the year 24, then I restarted the business beginning of, this would have been, I think, 2018, 2019, so I would have been just turning 25. So I actually still own that business, by the way. That's been doing $2 million a year. But after I'd say about a year and a half of doing it again, the entire business was completely automated. So this is when I was sort of doing more coaching, more consulting, focusing on the course. The business was entirely automated properly. We had employees, we had systems, we had structure. Everything was sort of running. I would check in with them on a weekly basis. So I didn't really have to worry about it anymore. It was kind of something that just made money in the background. And then I kind of started focusing on what else could I do with my skills, basically. What else could I do? What else could I do with my skills outside of e-commerce? E-commerce was awesome, but I wanted to explore a little bit. So 2020 rolled around. This was, I guess, 2 years ago now. Time flies. It's insane. 2020 rolled around. I was 26. So this was kind of that year and a half point when the business was basically automated. And I basically just decided, like, I'm gonna explore some other things. What else can I do? What else can I do with it? So I ended up moving into a house with some friends, and this was when sort of COVID started and the lockdown started, and we were in Canada, so we couldn't leave the country. You couldn't really go out and do anything. So we're just like, we're gonna lock down in this house, and we're gonna try and build some businesses. And just see what happens, and we're gonna expand outside of the e-commerce area and go into some other things. So we got into a bunch of stuff. Like we created like some social channels that didn't really go anywhere. We're gonna build like a course and a bunch of stuff. Ended up hating it, so we didn't do it. Then we built a social creator agency, which did actually quite well. And then we got into COVID testing business. That went phenomenally well, and then it went horrible. At some point in time in the future. Yeah, and I got very. It's also when I got like super heavy into blockchain, into crypto, and sort of investing, and now taking the money that I had earned over the last few years and learning, hey, well, if I want to multiply that, I'm gonna have to start investing. So I got really heavy into investing in 2020. Crypto investing, stocks. I wanted to get into real estate, but I couldn't because of COVID. So it was like this explosion of, I was in this one sort of path for a very long time, and I realized, hey, I have all these skill sets. These skill sets can also be applied elsewhere, and it just kind of expanded everything.
Yeah, and that's something that Hormozy talks about, like the SME 500, right? What do you think that, and it seems like you kind of went all in on generating principal income through your businesses, and then you wanted to multiply it. Yeah. What do you think? Because you hear a lot of people saying like you should start investing like early in the process, even if it's like $20, $50 a month, whatever it is. What do you think? What is your philosophy behind like starting to invest versus like, like you did put like 40 grand out of the 50 grand you had into like courses to educate yourself. What do you think that ratio is, or that philosophy is for?
I think there's a period of time where you have to put 100% into yourself. I don't think there's like the ROI you're going to get on yourself in the early stages is infinitely larger than you're going to get if you put $100 a month into stocks, for example. Like put $100 into ads. And learn from it. Hire an employee for $100 a month and learn from that. Like there's this sort of level of experience and knowledge you have to gain, and the quickest way to do that is to invest in yourself. So you have to once you hit a point where you no longer really need to learn. Like of course you have to continue learning, but you have this base level of skills that you've already acquired. Then I think you can start investing in other areas with your excess income. But I don't think it's smart to do it from day one. If you're working a 9 to 5 and you're going to work a career and make 200 grand a year for the rest of your life, then you have to start investing day one. But if you're planning to build a business and you want to build your skills and become an entrepreneur, the biggest ROI you're going to get is on yourself for the first few years. So put it into learning, put it into hiring, put it into advertising, put it into testing products, whatever it is. That's the biggest ROI you're going to get.
Yeah, and what do you think are like some signs that you can see in your own situation where you could say, hey, I should start allocating more funds to investments in crypto and things like this?
I think once you're at a point where you can confidently say, if I do this, I will make money, then you can start investing, because there is a very noticeable shift I noticed this probably 3 years ago now. There's a very noticeable shift where you see more opportunities than you have the time to actually partake in. When you start, it's like there's no opportunity. You can't. It's so hard to find opportunity. But now, like, so many people come to me with business ideas that, like, yeah, I can make money with that, 100%. Give me 6 months and that'll be making money. I think once you're at a point where you can confidently say, if I do this for 6 months, I will make income, then you can very, very comfortably start investing, because you're never going to run into a scenario where you don't know how to make money, and then you have to dip into your investments and then use your investments for. So it's a very strategic point in time where you're never going to have to. So the one thing you don't want to do with investments is have to use them, have to take the money out. So once you're at a point where you can confidently say, I'm never going to have to do that again, then you can start investing very comfortably.
Interesting. And you obviously had ridiculous amounts of self-growth through business, through learning. Did you, and obviously now you're into you've done 75 Hard recently. Throughout this whole process, did you do any other self-growth initiatives? Obviously you were into fitness, through football and things like this. Like, what was your, did you do any self-growth initiatives besides that?
Yeah, I was very sort of routine oriented. So I did a ton of meditation. Like, I was meditating every morning. I was working out 3 to 5 days a week very consistently. I actually went and took acting classes and sort of acting and like my acting teacher calls them life classes, basically. You get better at life, you get better at acting. You get better at being a real human, you get better at acting, basically. So that was sort of like conquering limiting beliefs, conquering self-doubt, conquering imposter syndrome, conquering fear of failure, conquering fear of speaking to people and speaking in front of people. So my life has always been, what do I suck at and how do I fix it? That was basically it. So if I had self-doubt, it's like, how do I fix this? Right. Again, I'm fortunate to have a like 99% logical brain, basically, where I can just with no emotion look at myself and say, I suck ass at this thing, and then find somebody who can teach me how to be better at it, or find resources or do exercises or whatever. So if I, when I was terrified on speaking on camera, I went and took acting classes. Right. This is going to make me better at speaking on camera. So I'm going to go conquer my fear. I'm going to go make a fool of myself in front of 100 people in a class. Right. And I'm just going to get over all this, and I'm better at speaking on camera. Wow. Do I have imposter syndrome? Cool. I'm going to talk to somebody who probably had it. How did they overcome it? I'm going to do what they did. It was always, no matter what it was from a self-growth perspective, I could always identify or at least look at myself from just a standpoint of not good or bad, just what is wrong, what am I doing incorrectly, and then attack that exact situation. Yeah, fascinating, man. And obviously, I feel like it's the logical side of your brain that allowed you to view a situation like COVID and start a business out of it. When everyone else is like getting scared and buying all this meat and toilet paper, you're like, what can we do? Oh yeah, that was like one of my biggest years of growth, because we look at it, we're literally stuck in a house. I know so many people who spend the entire year collecting, the paycheck and playing video games the whole year. And I mean, maybe there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but me personally, I was like, there's no way I'm doing this. If I'm stuck in a house for a year, I might as well just put all my time and energy into learning, growing, and building something out of it. I can't do anything else. Might as well do something productive. Yeah, 100%. So fast forwarding up until like now, what are your main focuses? What are your main ventures, and what do you got going on? Yeah, so I've very much shifted into first thing I did over the last probably 2 years. I've discovered what I'm good at. And I've decided that I'm only going to do what I'm good at. I'm not going to do any of the things I'm not good at, because I'm going to get the biggest return on what I am good at. So what I am good at is I'm very good at vision and direction. I'm not very good at being a person in the trenches doing the programming or the building of landing pages, but I'm very good at seeing a vision, building a group of people, and then moving them towards that vision. So I've turned into, I'd say, more of an investor versus an actual builder, if that makes sense. So I'm now in multiple different ventures. So we're building projects in the blockchain space. We're building projects in the e-commerce space. We're building agencies, CRO agencies specifically. Building a course app to bring basically business information to be accessible to the entire planet. So I've very much shifted into guidance and vision versus this is my idea. I'm going to do the grind work to get to that point in time. It's a much longer term play. Like you don't see. It's not like dropshipping when I started, where I could build a landing page set of ads in one day and start seeing profit tomorrow. This is very much like you don't see results for 6 months, 12 months, sometimes longer. But it's a lot more aligned with what my skill set is, and I feel there's going to be this is the thing that I had to do to go to a much larger level than I was before. I had to play a longer term game with a skill set that I was better at, basically.
Makes sense. And what advice would you give to somebody who maybe has like a big vision, and this vision requires hiring and team building? What are some crucial lessons in that department, or crucial philosophies that you would give to that person?
I'd say the biggest thing that I've learned goes back to all of your answers are always in front of you. Like there's literally never a moment in time in my past, and there will never be in the future where I don't know what to do.
Right.
Like it's the only time you don't know what to do is when your ego won't allow you to say I suck at this one thing and fix that. So if you can be very real with yourself, it literally doesn't matter what the situation is. You know, it comes to hiring, you know if it's a good hire or a bad hire. You know if you put the work in training them or not. If you want to get results, look at the situation from an unbiased perspective. Don't be emotional towards it, and literally just attack the one thing that you know needs to be improved. And you will. There's no limits to what you can do once you have that mentality.
Yeah, of course. And you're in the blockchain space, in the crypto space. I would consider myself like a beginner, and I know a lot of people watching might be in this boat where either they're kind of getting into it or they have no idea what it is, but they hear everyone talking about it. Could you give us a little education on what is blockchain, what is crypto, and why should we care about it? Why should we get into it?
Totally. So the sort of I think misconception that people have is that crypto is a currency, and I mean I guess that probably comes from the fact that it's advertised as cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
So everybody sort of thinks that crypto is a currency, when the reality of the situation is crypto blockchain is software. It is a new form of software that is infinitely more efficient than the old systems, basically. So blockchain is an upgrade to everything that we have. It is literally an improvement to anything that is ever built in the entirety of human history.
Wow.
And anything that has been built so far that isn't blockchain related will be replaced by something blockchain related at some point in time in the future. So blockchain, very very simply put, is just software. It's an upgrade to a software system that we've had for many years that is at this point in time outdated and inefficient.
Got you. So like what exactly blockchain, like the cryptocurrencies, they're hosted on the blockchain, is that correct? Like how does it work exactly?
Yeah, so the blockchain is basically it's the software that the token is built within. Right. So for example, you look at Ethereum, for example, very obviously one of the most popular ones. But Ethereum is open source software that uses the token Ethereum as what's called a gas fee to basically execute code. So for you to develop on the Ethereum network, you have to use Ethereum as the currency to actually develop these changes in the code itself. So Ethereum is just open source software. Anybody can go and they can build a project on Ethereum. You can build a real world solution using Ethereum, using the Ethereum network, and then you just pay Ethereum to the network essentially to build these projects within it, if that makes sense. Trying to make it as simplified as possible.
Yeah, no, totally, man. So how should somebody start to implement this into your life? Obviously, we've had a conversation about when you should start investing in yourself.
Yeah.
How does whether it's a person's an entrepreneur in a 9-to-5, how does somebody integrate this whole crypto thing into that? Did they start dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin and Ethereum? Are there other practicalities of it that they should look at too? What should be their mindset?
Yeah, if you're completely brand new, dollar cost average, it's the easiest thing to do. It's the sort of safest thing to do. If you really want to go down the rabbit hole, I look at what's going on with blockchain and Web3. Like, it is exactly the same as what happened with the dot-com boom when the internet first started exploding. Like this is the next layer of the internet essentially. So all of these projects that are being built, they are no different than the tech startups in 1999 that were being built. So if you actually, what I did to learn was I went and learned what happened in the dot-com boom. I went and looked at what was happening, the companies that were being built, and when you actually compare them side by side, they're identical. 99% of the projects that were built in 1999 in the dot-com boom, they failed. They were failures. They were scams. They didn't go anywhere. So it's the exact same scenario that's happening with all of these crypto projects that are being built. So if you want to, we have an incredible opportunity because we have like Google, Facebook, Facebook's, the YouTubes, the PayPals of the world being built on the blockchain right now. They're not going to be worth $1 trillion for 20 years, but if you can go and identify incredible teams that are behind them, incredible solutions that are being built, this is the opportunity to buy Amazon when it was $15 a share, or PayPal when it was a few dollars a share, for example. So it's just a new shift in technology basically, and all these projects that are being built, these tokens that are being built, are exactly the same as these massive companies, these tech companies that were built 20 years ago.
Very cool. So what do you see as the future, the next 10, 20, 30 years? Where is this going? Where is crypto going? Web3? What do you see? AI, like what do you see as the picture here?
Yeah, I think blockchain is going to. Blockchain is the future, like irrefutably. And not because I don't think blockchain as like a currency is the future. If that makes sense. I think blockchain as a software is the future because it's more efficient. Like you can build, for example, one of the projects that we're working on right now, what we built in a short period of time with a very small team. Historically, in the past, to build something very similar would have taken a team of 80 and millions of dollars in salaries basically going towards it because it's just a more efficient system. It's a much simpler, better to work with system than we currently have. So blockchain to me is like there's 99.99% chance that everything that we currently see right now will be eventually overtaken by some form of blockchain solution because it's just significantly more efficient than the current system, and efficiency always overwrites the inefficient system. I think you're going to see incredible innovation in the next few years. You're going to see a lot of people who have more access to stuff like banking, stuff like financial systems. Like there's countries in the world where there's millions of people who can't even open a bank right now, and blockchain solves that. So we're going to see an upgrade to society. Basically, the entire planet is going to upgrade because of the level of efficiency that blockchain brings to the table.
Yeah, of course. And in the short term, obviously, there's a bunch of things going on. The war, Russia and Ukraine, like this impending recession that everyone keeps talking about. What should your mindset be heading into this area of uncertainty? Maybe you are an entrepreneur, or maybe you want to be an entrepreneur. Maybe you already have a thing. Maybe you're uncertain. Everyone else is kind of freaking out. What should your mindset be?
I think we are entering the single greatest opportunity we've had in many, many years to create generational wealth for yourself, purely because of the fact that, everything has crashed astronomically already, and it's only going to get worse as the situation continues and interest rates continue to rise, and there's sort of wars looming and all these things that are happening. The market's just going to continue to go lower and lower and lower. So if you can focus on building skills, building value, building cash flow, saving it, being frugal, not spending it, you could very easily retire in the next 4 years just off of playing the scenario right, if that's something you want to do. Or you can build an astronomical amount of wealth simply because this is such an opportunity to buy assets at such a ridiculously low price. Stock market's down 60 to 80% in some scenarios. Crypto's down 60 to 80% in most scenarios. Real estate market's about to crash. So we have an incredible opportunity to that's what I'm doing. I'm building cash flow generating businesses to buy assets at a cheap price. So I think right now, realistically, every dollar you can put away and you can invest will be worth $3 to $5 in the next 5 years. Like at a bare minimum, maybe more than that, depending on exactly what happens. So now is the time to lock in, build skills, build cash flow, and be very, very frugal with how you spend money.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, man. And if you were on a global newscast, if you had access to every single person in the world, and you had to give them like one message, either regarding like the next few years or just in general or just a philosophy, you'd one thing to say, one message to give, what would that be?
That's a tough one. I would say, if I could give one message, I would say ignore the noise, trust yourself. That's really it. Like I see so many people whose vision or their dreams or their goals get crushed because of outside opinions, basically. So don't let anybody other than yourself move you in any form of direction. Believe in yourself. That's it. Believe in your vision. It's the only way I am where I am now is purely because I've been able to shut out the noise of the rest of the world. So if you have a vision, go after it. Don't let anybody steer you in any other direction. Don't let anybody stop you from pushing towards that.
Nice. That is awesome, man. And if somebody wants to follow you or get in touch with you or learn from you, where are the best places to do that?
Instagram really is the only one. I'm incredibly unactive.
Right.
I'm in like ghost mode, building business phase right now. But that'll be the place. I'll be back to content probably sometime next year. I plan to get on the YouTube and start sharing the knowledge and get back to Instagram, back to Twitter. But yeah, you just follow me there, and then eventually you'll see what comes from that.
Nice.
I think I post like once every 2 months.
Yeah, that's fair, man. Cool, man. Well, I really appreciate you hopping on today, man. I know I got a lot of value from it. I'm sure the people watching did as well. And I really appreciate your time today, brother.
Absolutely, that's fun.
Absolutely, I appreciate you devoting your 10 a.m. potent bandwidth to the podcast, man.
Absolutely.
And if you guys have any feedback or any follow-up questions for the episode, feel free to comment or message myself. And I'll see you in the next episode. Peace out, guys. Good shit, brother. Hell yeah.